Hey, welcome back. Today, we are diving into an absolute architectural marvel, one you use every single day without even thinking about it. It's a masterpiece of strength and mobility, and it's right inside your own body. So let's start our tour.
All right, to get us started, I've got a quick question for you. Just think about it for a second. There is one bone that actually holds all three of those titles: longest, biggest, and strongest. Any ideas what it might be?
If you guessed the femur, you nailed it. It is the one and only bone in your thigh. And its name? Well, it literally just comes from the Latin word for thigh. Pretty simple, right? But believe me, its structure is anything but. Let's start our tour at the very top.
Okay, our journey kicks off right where the femur connects to the rest of the body. This is where it forms one of our most critical and mobile joints, the hip. Now, to really get what's going on here, we first need to know which way we're looking. So the first thing you have to understand is the huge difference between the front and the back. The anterior view, that's the front, is generally way smoother, and that's for movements. But the posterior, the back view, that's a whole different story. It's much, much rougher. And why is that? Well, because that's where all the big, powerful muscles have to anchor themselves. Trust me, this distinction is the key to understanding everything else.
And this right here is just a perfect example of form following function. You see this big ball-like part? That's the head. It fits perfectly into the hip socket, creating that amazing ball and socket joint that gives your leg such an incredible range of motion. And that little pit on it, the fovea capitis, that's an anchor point for a super important ligament. And of course, the neck connects this whole setup to the rest of the bone.
Okay, before we go any further, let's get a key term down that you're about to see a lot: trochanter. Yeah, it sounds a little complex, but it's really just a fancy name for a bony bump where muscles attach. Think of them like heavy-duty anchor points for the muscles that move your leg. And you know what? The femur has two of them. You've got the greater trochanter, that's the big one on the outer or lateral side. Then there's the lesser trochanter, which is smaller and kind of tucked away on the inner and back side. Both of them are absolute workhorses, giving some of the most important muscles in your hip and thigh a place to attach.
And this is so cool because it shows the real-world importance of anatomy. You can actually feel the greater trochanter on the side of your hip. From a clinical standpoint, it's used as a landmark for fitting a cane properly, and it's also a critical spot to check for pressure sores on patients who are bedridden. So, see, it's not just some random bump on a bone. It's a really key clinical landmark.
So, what connects these two trochanters? Well, on the front, the anterior side, it's a feature we call the intertrochanteric line. And just like we talked about, true to form for the front of the bone, it's a pretty smooth, subtle line.
But flip that bone over, and it is a completely different story. On the posterior side, they're connected by the intertrochanteric crest, which is a much thicker, more obvious ridge. Remember what we said about the back being for muscle attachment? This crest is a perfect example of that.
All right, we've covered the hip connection. So now let's travel on down the long, powerful shaft of the femur itself. Just below that hip connection on the back side, we find this rough little patch called the gluteal tuberosity. And just like the name suggests, this is the anchor point for your biggest butt muscle, the gluteus maximus. Here's an easy way to remember its location. Your rear end is on your posterior side, and so is this attachment point. As we keep moving down the back of the shaft, we run into its most prominent feature, the linea aspera. An anatomy gives us a huge clue in the name here. It's Latin for rough line, and well, that is exactly what it is. But this isn't just any old line. It's this massive, long ridge that acts as a central hub for so many of your powerful thigh muscles. It's basically the backbone of the femur's shaft, giving it the strength you need for walking, running, and jumping. And as it gets near the bottom, you can actually see it split or fork into two smaller lines. Which brings us to our final destination. We've traveled the whole length of the femur, and now we've arrived at the complex and really crucial structures that form the top half of your knee joint. And again, before we start pointing things out, let's define our term. A condyle is a smooth, rounded projection on a bone. Its whole job is to form a joint with another bone. You can kind of think of it as the rocking chair part that allows for all that smooth movement. So the key thing to get here is the difference between a condyle and an epicondyle. At the very bottom, you have the large medial and lateral condyles. These are the smooth surfaces that connect with your shin bone, the tibia.
Now, right above them are the medial and lateral epicondyles. See that prefix epi? It means upon. These are the rougher bumps that serve as attachment points for all the ligaments and muscles around your knee. Now, looking at the front of the knee, you'll see this smooth groove right between the condyles. This is the patellar surface. It creates a perfect little track for your kneecap, or patella, to glide in as you bend and straighten your leg. It's pretty amazing. Okay, let's flip to the back one last time. Between those two condyles, there's a really deep, wide gap. This is the intercondylar notch, which literally just means the notch between the condyles. And what it's holding is incredibly important. You see, this notch provides a safe, protected space for two of the most famous ligaments in the entire human body, the ACL and the PCL. I mean, anyone who follows sports has heard of these, right? They're absolutely critical for knee stability, and this deep groove in the femur is their home. Wow, so we've journeyed all the way from the hip down to the knee. Let's do a super quick recap of the major landmarks we've explored on the body's biggest and strongest bone. Let's just quickly retrace our steps. It all starts up at the hip, where that ball-like head gives us incredible mobility. From there, the trochanters act as those powerful anchors for our muscles. Traveling down the shaft, the linea aspera provides that central, rough line of strength. And our whole tour ends down at the knee, where the smooth condyles create the joint, letting us walk, run, and jump. And that is a quick tour of the femur. I mean, from its perfect ball and socket joint to that protected notch for the ACL, every single bump and groove has a purpose. It's just a masterpiece of biological engineering. Which leaves me with one final question for you. Now that you've toured the body's strongest bone, what part of our anatomy should we explore next? Thanks for joining me.